All right, well, here we are, week 8 of the W Hoops podcast, and this is actually take two of the podcast as we were traveling this weekend and got to go up to Indianapolis to watch the game against the LA Sparks and tried to do it from our hotel room this morning and had some technical difficulties. So here we are after a fun weekend. So, what were your thoughts after spending the weekend in Indy?
Yeah, it was fun. The WNBA was all over the place. When you arrive in Indy, you walk out onto a full-size basketball court, and that's there just for the WNBA All-Star Weekend coming up. And all over the place, there's signs, there's Indiana Fever stuff everywhere. And then when you walk around downtown, my background is a picture from, I think it was a Marriott building that, like, it was the full side of the building, was a picture of Caitlin Clark shooting a three and says from downtown in um, my town. In Indianapolis. So that was fun just seeing everything that they're doing for the All-Star weekend and for Indiana in general. And the streets in Indy also, as you walk towards Gainbridge, they have like the names of all the teams. So there's a little Atlanta street sign and then Chicago, Connecticut, and all the way down. So that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, Indy is a great sports town. They host a lot of big events there from amateur, Olympic trials or big national swim meets to, all-star games on the basketball and now the all-star in both men's and women's side. And, they've got the Colts there, obviously, and they just do a great job of hosting. And, it's a sports town. And Indiana's obviously a basketball state, so you see so many people into it and walking around with the jerseys, with shirts, and even when we flew out of DFW earlier in the week to come up to Indiana, just I wore this shirt on purpose to see what would happen, and just had some conversations based on me wearing an Indiana Fever shirt.
Oh yeah, there are a bunch of people saying, "Hey, do you think Caitlin's gonna play, or are you going to the games?" And yeah, just people talking about the WNBA in general, which is a positive trend that you probably wouldn't have seen 5 or 10 years ago.
It is, and obviously, the big story is Caitlin Clark. She's the one who's drawing a lot of attention to the WNBA, and hopefully they're really going to capitalize on it, like the NBA did when you had Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and then shortly after them, Michael Jordan come into the NBA, and the popularity of the league just catapulted. And player salaries went up, franchise values went up, attendance, viewership, everything just increased greatly. And I feel like the WNBA is going to do that if they're really smart about how they handle this. But you know, we were talking a little bit this weekend while we were in Indy, just marveling at all of it, like the whole Caitlin Clark experience and why particularly, what has caused it that Caitlin Clark has been the one who's kind of caused this popularity to go up so much.
hmm Yeah, and I think what we landed on was from the basketball perspective, she has some unique skills that have never been seen before. You mainly think about like the deep threes, which like she has the ability to hit threes from greater range than anyone else in the women's game has ever done. And also just great passes. She's an exceptional passer, makes a lot of risky passes that pay off fairly often. I mean, she does also lead the league in turnovers, but she makes fun passes. She plays an exciting style of basketball. Um, yeah, and then also just the way she plays, her passion, the way she engages the crowd. And then also we were talking about just being from Iowa, Iowa being a state without any pro teams, so they're all in on their college teams. And she was a hometown kid who stayed home and took a medium Iowa team to the national championship game 2 years in a row, her junior and senior year.
Yeah, I think that's a real key to it. We've talked some too about just the history of women's basketball in Iowa, that state has had a long history of just with the 6-on-6 game long before women's basketball is popular in other states, it was a big deal in Iowa. And so there was really kind of a ready-made fan base for someone to come along like Caitlin. And it just seems like the timing is perfect, the setting was perfect. Then for her to go to a basketball crazy state like Indiana, um, just seems like the right place, the right time, and all that combination of things. And there's been like an exponential effect of growth of popularity for her in particular. And just hopefully, the league will be really smart, the Fever will be smart, and they'll, you know, take advantage of this opportunity and really grow the league. And that saying can be true that the rising tide raises all ships. It really happened with the NBA, and hopefully it'll happen. But it was fun to be in Indy this weekend to see all the excitement. The game itself was a little disappointing. The Fever led most of the game, but ended up losing a tough one.
Yeah. But even just being there, it was a sold out game, even with Caitlin out with an injury. And you see probably 90% of the people there were wearing 22. And then the second highest number that we saw, which was funny, was number 8 for Sophie Cunningham. And then her jersey was sold out at the team store. And then I think Aaliyah Boston was probably the third most frequent shirt that you would see out there. But yeah, just cool to see all the people. They do a really good job at Gainbridge. Everything's very professional and well done. So yeah, that was neat, despite the loss.
Yeah,
And the loss, even with the loss, it was a buzzer. There was a buzzer beater shot to try to send it to overtime. So they still haven't really had any bad blowouts, except for the one game against Atlanta.
yeah, just a couple of specific things about that game. They did get a good look for Boston. It wasn't maybe the best look in the world, and I think you mentioned she might have rushed it a little bit. She could have maybe taken just a half second more to gather herself, but it was a good shot. She's a good shooter from that range. And the possession before that, they missed a close in shot, but Lexi got an offensive rebound, and they had a second opportunity, but just couldn't. The second opportunity wasn't a good look. But one thing tactically that I thought was strange was when they tried to trap Kelsey Plum a couple of times in the fourth quarter, and both times really backfired. Kelsey's, you know, a good guard. She keeps her head up. She's strong. You can't just bump her and off the ball. And she was able to make a good pass to someone wide open both times and got easy looks for LA. And it was. I know it's sometimes good to mix up your defensive looks, but that seemed to be a mistake and really an ineffective strategy against Kelsey.
Yeah. And also in the fourth quarter, they went small for large portions of it. And to start the fourth quarter, I think Aaliyah had just picked up her fourth foul, but they had Boston and Mitchell on the bench to start the quarter, and that did not help them out at all. When you have Caitlin out, I feel like you have to have one of those on the floor at all times just for scoring threat.
Yeah, so the game result was a little disappointing, but it was a fun weekend. It was
Yeah.
really great to get to experience the Fever crowd and be there in person.
And it was
But
fun. Timpson is continuing to get minutes, so that's encouraging. She had a monster block that the crowd went wild for. So yeah, that's good to see.
yeah,
Um,
we like her a lot. We think she can be a real contributor this season in bits and pieces, be a role player, and hopefully really develop and be a strong presence going forward for the Fever.
yeah.
So
But yeah, it was fun. And I mentioned earlier that it's still fun even when Caitlin's not playing. Like she's still just a funny person to watch. There was a timeout where she was high-fiving all her teammates and tried to high-five the ref, and the ref just walked by her and ignored it. But
yeah,
little things. She's an entertaining person.
she is for sure. So, but what if I had asked you, back in April, based on what we knew then, if uh, the Indiana Fever were going to play a game in early July against Minnesota and Las Vegas without Caitlin Clark and without Dewana Bonner, what do you think the results would have been?
Yeah, probably a 20-point loss. I would not have thought that they could have competed, let alone beat them, let alone blown them out.
Yeah, so even though the this last game on Saturday was a little disappointing, it was actually a great week
Yeah.
for the Fever. Won the Commissioner's Cup. I mean, That was a huge win, and I
And
mean,
it
we
was
beat
just to have
Minnesota
a
soundly at
yeah.
Minnesota.
Yeah, and especially it was encouraging to see because they got off to a bad start. I think Minnesota took a 13-point lead pretty early. Um, but Natasha Howard had a great game. Someone said in our family chat that someone needs to tell her there's $500,000 on the line every game and see if she comes
Yeah.
out like that. But yeah, she played really well. Boston played well. Mitchell played well. And the defense was really good. Nafisa had an off night, but Natasha and Boston did well when they were matched up on her.
Yeah. Natasha deservedly won the MVP of that game. I mean, she just looked like she had some spring in her step that she hasn't had all season. It seemed like she's been nursing an injury or something on and off throughout the year. And a lot of times she has something on her back when she's not in the game, but she looked great. And uh, the Fever, we had talked about a little bit. They were surprisingly rated highly on their defense. Like I think number 4 in defensive efficiency, which
Mhm.
shocked me when I saw that. Yeah, that was before this week's games. So they've been doing well on the advanced statistics side of defense, and it showed up in the games against Minnesota and Las Vegas this week.
Yeah, for sure. And in the loss to LA, the offense wasn't the problem. So it's encouraging that they're scoring without Caitlin. But yeah, we'd like to see the defense continue to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of a LA may be a bad matchup for them with.
They are. With the mobile bigs, Dierica and Azare had really good nights, and it was tough for us to defend them.
Yeah. And, it seems like Indiana's struggling a little this year in clutch games. I think I saw on the Indiana Fever subreddit that someone posted they were 3-7 in clutch games this year. So, we need some blowouts, and we got a blowout on Tuesday at Minnesota, which was a great win. And then Thursday against Las Vegas, another blowout.
Yeah. So yeah, that's crazy. Vegas couldn't get anything going except for Asia. I don't think anyone had double figures other than Asia. Yeah, and Asia's tough. You're not going to keep, a three-time MVP down the whole game. But the first half, they did a pretty good job on her. She got a lot of her points from the line. But yeah, the guards for Vegas did not have a good game.
Yeah, they didn't. And again, sometimes it's hard to know how much to credit one team's defense versus another team just having an off night offensively. But, big wins against two good teams, arguably the best team in the league in Minnesota right now.
Yeah.
And then Las Vegas is at least a playoff team, if not, better. We'll see, how things go. But I expect they'll be a playoff team. So to have two big wins against two good teams was very encouraging.
Without Caitlin
Yes, without
and without
Caitlin.
Dantas as well.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't minimize that at all. I think that's actually a big thing, and we're still having to figure out a rotation. I think with Duana Bonner now gone and with Dantas out,
And
it's
it seems like there might be something going on with Lexi as well, because it seems like she's had limited minutes.
yeah. The past few games, her minutes have been down. It seems like, and I mean, I know they want to get minutes for Sophie, and those two are kind of rotating in and out. But sometimes they've gone to small with both of them. But yeah, hopefully Lexi's not hurt. But it's probably going to take, you know, another few weeks really when Caitlin comes back and Dantas comes back to really figure out the rotation and get things going perfectly. But I think, an encouraging week overall, a tough loss. Like to see them get better in clutch games, but otherwise,
And make their free throws. They're missing free throws again.
and make their free throws. Yes, please do that. Part of being clutch. So I think maybe other news around the league, maybe a couple of big things. One is the All-Star game lineups came out.
Yeah. Um, so after the first 10 were released to like the players and the fans and the media vote on, the coaches picked the remaining 12, and they made some unusual choices. They put Kiki Iriafen and Sonia Citron on the team, which they've had. they've had very good seasons and kind of exceeded expectations, I think. Uh, but some of the people who got left off, I think there's definitely an argument. Like, how does Brittany Sykes not on the team and Sonia Citron is?
So, okay, this is something I wasn't even clear about. So, Citron and Iriafan were coaches' selections?
Yeah,
Wow. That makes that even worse of a
it is.
snub.
It's crazy. It makes
That
no
makes
sense.
no sense. Which coach picked?
Do the coaches have a, because the coaches can't vote for their own players. So do they have like alliances to pick their play, do they say I'll vote for yours if you vote for mine? Because that
But
doesn't
why
make,
wouldn't they pick Sykes if you're picking a Washington player? That's
I don't know.
ridiculous.
It is.
What
It's
a wow. Sykes should have been on it. I
yeah.
mean, that's Citron and has been good, but Sykes
He
has
has
been the
10
best
more
player on the
years to
team.
get. Yeah, and Sykes has never been an all-star. Cloud is another one that I think people are going to be disappointed didn't make it, but after a really strong start to the season, her numbers have dipped quite a bit. And you already have Stewie and Sabrina from the Liberty. Jonquel didn't make it, but she missed so much time, I think, that people just couldn't justify a spot for her when she wouldn't even be
Yeah.
able to play.
I mean, that's understandable, but I think that's just that's a horrible selection to have Citron and Iriafen selected over Sykes. That's the worst snub. I
Yeah,
think
I think
Cloud
so.
should be in there. And then we've got another one that we think Minnesota only had one, and they've got the far and away the best
Oh no,
record
they
in the
got
league.
Courtney Williams too. She
Oh, did
got in on
Courtney
the
make?
coaches. Yeah, Courtney made it.
Oh,
But they
okay.
arguably could have had three. Indiana had three and Seattle had three, and they're not a top one or two teams. So there's a
No.
good argument that NaLyssa Smith should have been on there.
Washington, are they even in the playoffs right now?
They would be if it ended today, but just they'd be the eighth team, I think. Or did no, maybe they slipped to
I
nine.
thought Las Vegas was
They might
ahead
be
of
at
them.
nine now, yeah.
Yeah, and they'd
That
have
doesn't
two
make any sense.
players. No, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know what the coaches were thinking if they selected.
That's
Well,
crazy,
that's
but it was
bad.
nice to see Kayla Thornton made it, so that was nice. Jackie Young made it. Honestly, you could make an argument that Sykes or Cloud should have made it over Jackie, but I like Jackie, so I'm not going to complain too much about that one. Um, yeah, there's some. You can also make an argument that Bree Jones should have made it. She's had a really good year. Ryan Howard made it. She's a high volume, high usage player, but I would have rather seen Bree Jones on the team.
Yeah, me too. And we both like Alana Smith and think she adds a lot to Minnesota. And I would like to have seen her on the team. But I think the big snub is Sykes being not being
Yeah.
picked and two of her
And
t rookie teammates being picked over her.
and especially because they don't have a winning record. Azare Stevens and Dearica Hamby didn't make it either, but LA has such a bad record. You can understand only one player from LA making the All-Star team, but it's not like Washington is, top five in the league. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That could have gone into our what were they thinking segment, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow, that's bad. Well, other news is next Sunday, I believe, is the deadline for teams to release players without their before their contracts become guaranteed for the
Yeah.
season.
Right, yeah.
So,
So teams have a week to cut anyone they want to if they're going to make any roster moves that aren't just trades where it's hard though because they have a hard salary cap. So once you pass this point and you can't waive anyone, trades can get pretty tricky if you're not, trading people with the same salaries. So I would expect to see a few people waived this week. Emma Mieseman is still undetermined if she's going to come at all, but it sounds like she's considering Minnesota, New York, and Phoenix, which all of those, if any of them get her, for Phoenix, I don't know if it makes them a favorite for the championship, but they'll be in the semifinals for sure, if not the finals. Minnesota, I think, would become favorites to win. And then New York, that's just unfair. If New York gets her, I don't know how they could even do that or who they would have to get rid of. But if New York keeps Stewie and Jonquel and Sabrina and adds Mieseman, it really doesn't matter what they do with the rest of the roster.
yeah, I guess maybe it depends on Jonquel's health. Maybe that
Yeah.
would be a consideration for them. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, if Jonquel's healthy and they get Meeson and forget about it, that team's going to win for sure. But yeah, we feel like Minnesota was robbed last year. Would like to see them win this year, even though we're pulling for the Fever. We'd really like to see NaLyssa and the Lynx get the title that they deserve. So love to see Miesman go there, at least on a rest of the season contract, and then maybe she could join the Fever next year.
There you go.
But yeah, so I think she's the big prize. I don't know if there are any other
I mean,
big.
I think people are going to wait and see where Miesman ends up, and then wouldn't be surprised if Bonner ends up signing somewhere within a few weeks or, a few days maybe, once Miesman is decided if she's coming or not or where she's going. But I don't think anyone wants to pick up Bonner if there's a chance they could get Miesman.
Yeah. And we had also talked about the Aces as a what we thought would be a good landing place because their big hole has been at the power forward with even though we like Kia Stokes a lot, she's really a great defensive player, but and liability on the offensive end. She just hasn't developed to be a threat. And even when Caitlin Clark's guarding her,
Yeah.
or somebody's, but they don't post her up. They don't try to attack that. So you can just put the weakest defender on Kia and hide them and play. They're playing 4-on-5. So
Yeah.
that kind of leads us to our next portion of the podcast with the what were they thinking?
Yeah.
So what?
Vegas made a big move on Monday, arguably a bad move, but a big one. They traded a 2027 first round pick for NaLyssa Smith. And Dallas basically had to, let's see, to get NaLyssa, they made Indiana give up a first round pick when they took her. So it was part of that big, like, four-team trade, but. Man, Melissa did not have a great time in Indiana. She wasn't super effective in Dallas, and now LA, or not LA, Vegas, gave up a future asset, a 2027 first round pick, which is a loaded class. That's the Juju Watkins class,
Mm,
although we'll see if she comes out that year or not with her injury. But and Vegas won't have the number one pick most likely, but still, there's a lot of talent in that class. So that's really a win now move, I guess, from Vegas. But it seems like Melissa was not the right person to help you win now. She's not a great defensive player, and her offense is pretty hit or miss. So pretty surprising, especially because the next day it came out that Aaliyah Edwards is potentially on the market, and Washington is taking calls about her, and that seems like that would have been a much better fit. And on a
yeah.
player on a rookie contract, on the second year of her rookie contract, rather than the fourth year in NaLyssa Smith.
Yeah. I don't know what Las Vegas was thinking there. It seems like a bad pickup. Maybe they tried to have talks with Miesman and her people, and maybe they knew that wasn't going to work out for them. But NaLyssa Smith, I guess, at least really helped Dallas in the rebuild. If they got a pick from Indiana to take her,
Yeah,
and they got a
thanks,
pick
Melissa.
from Las Vegas to get rid of her, I mean, yeah, that's going to be a big help, hopefully, to Paige in building a strong contender. I feel like they've got a good core with Paige and Isaiah James has we really like her and think
Yeah,
couldn't understand why she wasn't playing more early in the season, but it looks like they're finally getting her playing time and she had a big game this week and
yeah.
so yeah, that was one of the items just
And Vegas
don't
also had to
understand.
waive, they also had to waive two players to make room salary wise for this move. They had to waive Tiffany Mitchell, who was kind of a veteran guard that they brought in, and then also Liz Kitley, who was their pick from a year ago, who was out last year with an injury. Um, so they've just had basically no picks, and then the picks they have had, they had to waive Liz Kitley to bring in NaLyssa Smith, and arguably Kitley has a lot more potential than Smith.
I think so. But speaking of waiving players, that brings us to our second what were they thinking this week? The Golden State Valkyries and Vanloo. And what
Yeah.
were they thinking? The way they treated her, it just the optics of it was so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Belgium just won the Eurobasket, and she had to something to do with the WNBA rules where they have to get back almost immediately once the overseas commitment ends, I think. So she skipped some of the celebrations, and I think you said meeting the king or something like
Yeah,
that.
the team got a meeting with the king to
Yeah.
congratulate them, and she skipped it to get back to play for Golden State.
Yeah, and then it sounds like pretty much as soon as she landed, they called her into the office and waved her. And so that's tough to prioritize coming back to your team in the US immediately and miss out on some of the celebrations with your national team and then to be waived immediately upon landing is not a good look, not a good feeling. There have been some people who said it has to do with like the visa, and if they had waived her before she came to the US, her visa would have been canceled immediately, and then potentially she wouldn't have been able to return at all, or, might have been delayed several weeks in getting a new visa. So there might be some legitimate reasons for it, but it still is a bad look.
Yeah, I saw an article, an interview with the coach saying that she thought it was the right thing to do to have that kind of a conversation in person and not to do it, long distance. But you can say what you will. It looked really bad. And Golden State has made a lot of good moves. They've,
Mhm.
been shockingly good for an expansion team. And yeah, I just don't know if this will have any, lingering impact for how players will view them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and
But
I think like the big thing this year was to get fans and to look like an attractive destination to go to. So that it could definitely give them a bit of a knock on that.
yeah, but thankfully Vanloo was picked up immediately. And so
Yeah, she
hopefully,
played with LA already, so yeah.
yeah. So hopefully no lingering impact, but just I don't know what they were thinking with how that was handled. It didn't look good, and
And
somebody needs to
they're
talk.
keeping Chen. Chen is still on the roster, so
Right.
just kind of adds. It's not like it was her or me here. They have room for her and Chen, unless it's a salary issue where they couldn't. Maybe they would have had to waive a me here and Chen to keep her. So that's possible, where they were able to keep two players for the price of one.
Yeah. It could be, but yeah, it looked bad, and it got some bad PR for Golden State that week. So, all right, so yeah, that's it for this week. Coming up, what's on the docket for the Fever in this coming week then? I think you said they have 3 games this coming
Yeah,
week as
they play
well.
Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So they get Golden State, and they're all at home, so that'll be nice. Because they had quite a few on the road and a bit of a tough schedule there for a while. So they have Golden State, which hopefully is a winnable game. Um, and it looks like that's one of those kid camp days, actually. It's an 11 a.m. game. So those are an interesting experience.
Avoid those public service announcement here. Avoid the
Or bring
kid
earplugs.
camp
Very
games or bring earplugs. If you're bringing your kids, it's a wonderful experience for the kids, but if you're
high decibel.
unprepared, very high decibel, bring earplugs.
And then they play Atlanta on Friday, and Atlanta is one of those really bad matchups for them. Um, so we'll see how that goes. And then they play Dallas on Sunday, so hopefully they can win two of the three and just keep Caitlin out and give her as much time to recover as possible.
Yeah, I mean that seems like the best way to go forward. Just keep her out until after the All-Star break, and they're going along about five. They're 500 right now. If they can win 2 out of 3 this week and get to that'd put them at 11-10, I believe. And then right now, I think you had said earlier that even with 9 losses, they're only like 3 games in the loss column out of third place.
Yeah, and
So,
New York just dropped a game, so New York is up. New York just lost today to Seattle. They kind of fell apart in the second half, so um, so they're actually, I think now they're only 3 losses behind second place with New York picking up another loss. So there's a lot of room
oh
to move
yeah, and
up
that's right in the loss column. I don't know
in the
about
loss column. Yeah, not
overall,
the
yeah,
win. But
but
yeah.
that's what really counts as a loss column when you're looking at it. So yeah, in the loss column, they're just 3 games out of second place.
Right.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get through these next couple of weeks. Caitlin gets 100% healthy, and things get moving again well for her.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, I think Dantas is playing her last game today or tomorrow and should be back soon. So it'd be nice to get everyone back and figure out a rotation.
And what is Indiana going to have to do roster wise? Are they going to have to make any moves when Dantas comes back, or they're okay now
So
since they let go with
they
Bonner
actually
go.
they still have room because Bonner was waived. Airy replaced Bonner effectively, but on a much lower um, salary, and so they still have room to pick up a player. I want to say about $120,000 to pick up a player. So they have 11. They can pick up a 12th, and I think they're looking to get a big. Obviously, Misaman would be the dream, but if not, you kind of keep an eye on the Valkyries, who they're waiving once all their Eurobasket players get back, and see if there's anyone on the market. Or I would love to get Aaliyah Edwards. I think that would be a great pickup.
That would be Miesemann's our dream. Aaliyah would be option B for us if they would do that. That would be great. We love Aaliyah from her days at UConn, and I think she's just a really strong offensive player and solid defensively.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be great if I don't know
And
what
she's on a
we
rookie
could.
contract. Let's go. She fits the Caitlin timeline.
Yeah, I just don't know what they could trade to Washington that Washington would want. That would be the
Yeah,
thing
that's
I
the
can't figure out.
yep. Yeah,
So
I don't know that we would be willing to give anything up that they and it doesn't seem like a good idea to give up future assets, draft picks and stuff.
yeah, no, it doesn't. All right. Well, hopefully, everybody get healthy and Dantas will get back soon and get some good wins. And then when is the All-Star game? What is the date of that?
It's the 18th or the 19th, or maybe like the yeah, 18 and 19th. So I would guess the game is on the 19th, but maybe the 18th is like the 3-point contest or something like that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it this week for the W Hoops podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit follow or subscribe and leave a comment or a review. We'd love to interact with you online and hope everybody has a great week and we'll see you next week.